Hello everyone, and this is Silvia Hernandez from MoModusBox. Today we are going to present our progress on the ModuleLoop DFSP experience. First, we're going to give you an overview of what ModuleLoop DFSP experience is. As MoModusBox, we have experienced the pain points along with DFSPs and hubs. We have applied our lessons learned to the existing process and tried to improve it. Right now, there are different services to do onboarding and daily management. Payment Manager integrates them, automate tasks, and help entities to have a better experience. Even this is focused on DFSP's operation and process, the hub also have some benefits where we can highlight. First, Payment Manager provides a guided process and automation. This is translated into speed to complete tasks and of course, the time that people need to spend doing it. The second one, as the information is presented in a visual way using dashboards, it's easier to quickly identify where things are not working as expected and areas where attention is needed. Other benefit for Hub is that Payment Manager is remotely supportable. We can help customers without being physically with them, so it's easier and quickly, of course, cheaper. On the other side, DFSP also have some benefits where we can mention, as first point, using Payment Manager reduces the time that DFSP needs to invest to complete the onboarding process. Using templates and automation empowers DFSPs to move faster and more independently. Also, there are interfaces focused on different areas with information that help each of them in the day-to-day process, improving their operational efficiency. Payment Manager sits on the DFSP side, allowing them the service evolution. The information is completely on their side, and it can be used to reconcile the transfers with the parties involved in the transaction and also with their own system information. Here is a very high-level summary of our progress since last convening and what we are seeing today in a moment. Also, what we are hoping to present in the near future in the next convening. This is a general architecture diagram where we can see the components included in Payment Manager. We'll talk about deeply in the next slides. There are three major components here. The core connector, that is the interpreter between the DFSP backend and the Payment Manager. The core Payment Manager, which is basically where users are able to interact with an interface with other components, and the ModuleLoop connector directly connected to MCM to exchange endpoints and certificates, and where we configure the DFSP and Hub connections. Now over to you, Marty.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sylvia. Hey, everyone. This is Murthy from MoModusBox. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk about the core connector. So before going into the details of that, let's try to understand what problem it is solving. So in the diagram in here on the right, let's say a DFSP, for example, is using ModuleLoop connector to connect to the ModuleLoop switch. And as we all know, among the many benefits that the ModuleLoop connector offers, one of the main benefit of using that is that it offers a very simplified synchronous REST-based API. So that is what we have on the right side. And if you see on the left side, there is a DFSP core backend application, or which we call a core banking solution. Now, depending on the banking application and depending on the integration options available, some might be having API-based integrations, some might be having some other mechanisms. So there got to be some component that is sitting in the middle and bridging the communication between the banking application and the ModuleLoop connector. So that is where the core connector comes into picture. It facilitates that communication between those two components. Obviously, there are many features that this core connector offers, but the main feature is it acts as a very lightweight transformation component, both at the protocol level and at the data level. Next slide, please. So with that understanding, in the UNCDF project, what we have done is that we implemented a template for this core connector or the adapter. And we have used MoModusBox as a core banking application. Um, and for the specific version of the T24 that we have chosen, it exposes SOAP API as a means of integrating to that. So we have SOAP API on one side and Modulo connector, which offers a REST-based API on the other side. And this template is showcasing the transformation between those two APIs, the format, the data, etc. Now, coming to the implementation, we implemented this template using Apache Camel and Spring Boot. Obviously, there are many technical choices that we have, but the reason we chose Apache Camel is because it is one of the most popular open source integration frameworks out there. And as we all know, like Spring Boot is also the most popular Java-based runtime framework. Hence, like we used that combination. Now, in the UNCDF project, we have successfully onboarded quite a number of core banking applications, some of which have been listed in here. The approach that we have taken is that we have provided this template to mostly the core banking vendors and also like to some SIs in some cases. And in majority of the cases, the vendors themselves are able to use this template as a reference, make some changes to that, adapt it, and then successfully integrate their backend into the Modulo connector. Coming to the timelines, what we have on an average seen is that it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to complete that a specific core banking application adapter or the connector. And then probably like it takes like a week extra to complete the successful onboarding end to end. So that is what like we have noticed on a ballpark. Next slide, please. So coming to the roadmap of this core connector, what we want to spend our time going forward is that as we are working with these multiple core banking solutions, what we have noticed is that if a DFSP, for example, if a developer like who is working on this integration, if he's able to perform locally all the validations, I mean like the technical and the business validations, right? Locally before connecting to a scheme specific sandbox, that will be extremely helpful for that specific team. And for example, as part of a business validation, they probably might want to validate against different Moja Loop API versions before standardizing on one. So that is one thing. And the another thing that we have seen repeatedly pop up across all these DFSPs is that once the basic setup has been completed, the DFSP wants to have the confidence that if I am able to run a suite of test scenarios or test cases that cover like the most of the generic scenarios, we'll be able to proceed to the next step. So that is what like we have repeatedly heard. And in those workings, like what we have identified is that like there are a specific set of common scenarios that we can come up with. And then a DFSP is free to use their own tooling of choice to implement those scenarios as test cases. So definitely that is one thing that we want to spend more time on. Now, going through these, like we've been looking into some tooling that is available out there that can satisfy these requirements. And what we have noticed is that the testing toolkit that is being developed as part of the open source community is a better candidate for accomplishing these requirements. So we definitely want to spend some more time on how we can facilitate the integration of testing toolkit into the payment manager to solve some of the challenges that were listed. And another area is that as and when the DFSP, either the development team or the QA team is working on their integration or the end-to-end testing, there will be need for debugging or troubleshooting exercises. And as part of that, they might want to access the logs or some metrics. Now, the payment manager itself offers a rich set of metrics as a part of its dashboards that James is going to talk about in the next section. So we want to explore that area a little bit and see how we can extend that into the core connector to provide that information. And the last thing that we want to spend time on is the ease of deployment. let's say a new FSP is trying to come on board, and if they are using a core banking solution for which we have a connector already available, we want to make sure like that process is all like easy, like as easy as possible to download that connector, to set it up, and then integrate it, and then do the end-to-end testing. Yeah, so that is all the stuff that I have for the core connectors. Next, I'll pass it on to James. Thank you.
Thank you, Moti. As you can hopefully see by now, MoModusBox are continuing to evolve tools and processes to further reduce the complexity, time, and obviously costs of DFSP's onboarding and interacting with ModuLoop schemes. What we're calling the ModuLoop connector is a step in that evolution. It adds on top of the existing ModuLoop SDK features, which are already out in the open source community, with things such as fully integrating with Connection Manager, giving automation of endpoint configuration and the key exchange, which is often problematic, as we've seen. On top of that, enterprise-grade monitoring and manageability features and remote support capability. While Payment Manager uses these additional features of the connector to enhance both the scheme and the DFSP experiences, it can be used standalone, and this gives the advantage of the Connection Manager integration and the supportability above and beyond the vanilla SDK. Next slide, please. Thank you. So by sitting in between a scheme and a DFSP backend, the Payment Manager provides a window into the flow of transfers and facilitates simplified business and technical operations. It gives a high-level visibility of the DFSP's business position and how that changes over time. It provides interfaces for managing settlement and reconciliation operations with the scheme, and it provides a fine-grained level of detail to support reconciliation, troubleshooting, and debugging. So what I would like to do now is cue a pre-recorded demonstration video, just highlighting some of the features of the Payment Manager interface. So the first thing I'm going to talk about in this demonstration is the ModuLoop connector, which is contained within the Payment Manager. It has within it an instance of the ModuLoop SDK, which, as we know, facilitates simplification and standardization of the security protocols required to connect both the DFSP system to a ModuLoop switch and the other way around. Remember, the API is bidirectional, so we have to allow the switch to make callbacks to us. Information exchange between the ModuLoop connector and the scheme is facilitated by a Connection Manager product, which exists in the scheme infrastructure. So we're now Payment Manager user interface. First thing we need to do is configure a connection to our scheme. So you'll see I have 3 different environments within the scheme that I can connect to. And this first one here, I'll just walk you through the various steps required to set up a connection. First of all, we do our business setup, which is mainly performed by the scheme themselves. They have to create us an account and assign us an identifier that will be used to identify us to the other participants in the scheme. Well, once we've been set up by the switch and we have our accounts created, we can proceed to the next series of steps. And these involve exchanging our endpoint details. So we plug into the user interface the IP addresses from which we are going to make calls to the switch. Many schemes use IP whitelisting to restrict access to their APIs to only known IP addresses. So we can exchange that information here. We can also tell the switch quite simply which IP addresses we're exposing to them for them to make callbacks to us on the bidirectional API. And we can also see the information on the scheme API that it's exposing. The next thing we need to do is exchange certificate signing requests. So we can either automatically generate our certificates just by clicking this button, or we can manually create them if we have our own internal CA, or we're using a CA that's common hosted on the internet, something like DigiCert, for example. We can just upload our sign-in request here and exchange them with the switch. We can exchange our CA certificates and intermediaries with the switch. Then we can exchange server certificates. So we would either, if we've automatically generated our server certificates, these are automatically populated, and I can check my certificate's valid. It will show me the various checks being performed against the certificate, which might be specific for the scheme. I can view the hub server certificates if I want. I can check that they're sending me a valid certificate, and I can upload my JWS public signing key, or again, if I've automatically generated my keys, this will be populated for me. I can also view the JWS public keys of all the other participants in the scheme, so this might be useful if I need to manually validate a signature. So once I've completed all these steps, I can actually have a connection to a MoModusBox switch, and you'll see that my user interface is telling me that I'm connected to this interface. I'm 100% complete in that wizard, so I can now interact with the switch. So our interface in Payment Manager is split into two main sections, the first of which is business operations, and this is focused around our financial position with the scheme, and we can see some charts showing our committed funds, reserve funds, and how our position and liquidity has changed over the last 48 hours. We can also see outflow versus inflow. We can see a summary of any problems we've had, any transfer errors that may have occurred, and we can also view our settlement process, settlement and reconciliation with the switch. So here's an example of a settlement batch with a bunch of transfers in it and some totals. So I can use this view to quickly and easily reconcile my position with the switch. If I want to drill in a bit more detail, I can go to this transfers overview, and I see some charts, some graphs showing me whether my transfers have been successful over the last 48 hours. So I've left some simulators running for the last day or so on my system here, and you can see that most of my transfers have been successful. Occasionally I've deliberately injected a few errors just to show you what happens on the charts. I can zoom into these areas if I want, so I can find the exact timestamp where I've experienced problems. I can pan these charts around as well. I can even download an image of the chart if I want, SVG or PNG. The next chart down is showing me my transfer latency with the switch. So I'm on a very stable connection. You can see my kind of average transfer latency is about 35 milliseconds for end-to-end 3-stage transfer. Again, I can zoom into a particular area on this chart if I spot an anomaly, which might help me with a support trouble call or debug. Again, on this page, I can see a summary of any problems I've had, transfer errors, and a breakdown of the type of errors I've had. These are the two different types of error that I've been simulating, pay limit errors and insufficient liquidity. I have a little view where I can drill down into those errors, and I can quickly see a list of those transfers that caused me a problem. I have a way actually of finding a particular transfer either by full or partial transfer ID, or I can do some other filtering. So let's say in the last 48 hours, I want to find all the transfers that have gone wrong. Here we go. Here's a list of the transfers that have gone wrong in the last 48 hours. I can examine one of these transfers in a bit more detail. So I can see it's an outbound transfer, sender, receiver, and who the other participant is that I'm interacting with. If I'm a technical user and I'm performing a debug, I can see some more technical details of the transfer, various IDs. I can see a breakdown of the party information, identify a type and value that was used to look them up in the ALS. I can see details of the API requests that I've exchanged with the switch. Let's find a successful transfer. The last 48 hours, there should be quite a few. Again, I can pick up one of these. I can see my fulfillment. So comparing my query response, I can see my ILP packet, my condition, I can see my fulfillment. So if I need to manually verify a transfer, I can, or if I need to supply that information as part of a reconciliation process, I can do it quite easily. That's the end of the demo I've got for you today. I don't have much time. There's a lot on the roadmap for this product, but I hope you will see the direction it's going. Thank you very much for your time.
I shall hand over to Brian Schneider at this point. Thank you.
So we've tried to show here is how we're progressing what we're trying to deliver around the the MoModusLoop DFSP experience, from helping with that initial integration with some core backend and letting the technical and business validation occur, through to establishing connectivity with the scheme and validating at that level, and then doing the day-to-day job of being connected and processing payments. We intend to make all of these components available to the community in the very near future, and we are looking for help across a number of these. So Murthy and the core connector space would love to have people join in and help create and improve the connectors and templates that are there now for the MoModusLoop connector itself. We're ready to start beta, and would love people to try it out. And Payment Manager is progressing, and we're looking for partners and DFSPs to help us in that space. So thank you very much.